Hey Neppers, it's me, Wild Neptune. Today, going over the newly revealed Lethe and ML Landy. As always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching. First up, we'll go over Lethe. Same stats as Conqueror Lilius, Ice Warrior Aquarius here. So, good bulk, good speed for Warrior. No damage stats overall, not gonna matter, and we'll see why in a little bit. And of course, the effectiveness imprint here. So our first one is the skill 2, Dreamer in the Deep. Does not cost any soul, singular, to activate the character's first soul burn. When attacking, has a 75% chance to inflict 1 omen on the target, regardless of whether or not the attack hits. Cannot be activated by an extra attack, dual attack, or counter attack. And 100% chance after the molas. What is an omen? Well, we'll find out in a little bit here, but just know for now, it is inevitable. You cannot resist it. You cannot ignore it with immunity. Also cannot be dispelled or transferred. It just stays there. Stacks up to 3 times. Attack, and there's the omen on that Sage Vivian right there with that ominous 1. Her skill 3 is Freeze Over. So AoE attack, decreasing buff durations by 1 turn before a 75% chance, 100 with the molas, to inflict Frostbite and Restrict for 2 turns. Soul Burn is getting an extra turn. Remember that her first Soul Burn is free. Also, if you don't remember, Frostbite ignores damage sharing and damage mitigation effects if you have Frostbite. So, Sage Vivian, Roy, always just turned off, stuff like that. And this is where she drops the icicle on them, and boom. And you'll see right there, everybody has the omen. Why? Because you cannot resist it, and it has a 100% chance. So before she had 1 omen, now she has 2, and everybody else also has 1. Remember, the other things can be resisted. And this is where we finally see what the omen does. So her S1 is single target attack, increases her own speed, and after attacking, if the target's omen is at 3, activates Call of the Abyss. So she summons the Kraken, and she attacks the enemy. And when the enemy is defeated, it inflicts Extinction, and recovers HP of all allies. Also, cannot trigger a critical hit, penetrates the target's defense, so true damage. Damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's max health, and amount recovered proportional to the target's max health. So this is why I said her not having any damage stats didn't matter, because she's an HP scaler that does true damage on her most important ability. And the fact that it is after the attack with 3 omen is pretty significant, because this means you can go with a soul burn, remember, free soul burn, S3 into an S1 on any target you want to, and because 100% chance and ignore everything, it will always hit. And then all she has to do is cycle 1 more time in order to proc this, take out a unit, extinct them, and get a big heal on your team. And the ability is simply her Kraken ability that we have all seen 1,000,000,000 times already in the side story. So let's go past that and get to the artifact. The artifact is Prayer of Solitude, obviously a warrior artifact. And at level 1, increases health, attack damage, and an extra attack damage by an additional 5% each. These are all doubled to 10% at max, and at 15, obviously it's halfway in between, so 7.5. And this might not seem like that much of an increase, because remember, 7.5 compared to 10 is only 2.5. But remember, it's 2.5 for 3 things, which adds up pretty quickly. Is this artifact going to be your best in slot? Maybe. And maybe because, I'll be honest, warrior artifacts are kind of bad overall, or very niche, I should say, where it's hard to really slot them in and, oh, this one's like the best one, right? Because right now, even artifacts like Sigurd's, it's still obviously very good on a lot of units, but because so many things need HP scaling and stuff like that, or defense scaling, Sigurd's isn't really as great, as there are less and less attack scaling warriors that are relevant in the meta at the moment. Now, is this health everything gonna trump stuff like maybe a proof if you want to run it on her? Maybe a Draco Plate, even though she doesn't really need crit damage at all, so that's not really the best. But maybe just for the mitigation, I don't know. Maybe something like Champion's Trophy could be like a nice meme thing, or maybe even something like Music Box to put on her or something like that. I don't know, right? But I do know this is going to be a pretty decent option on her. But because, again, a lot of warrior artifacts are kind of bad, it's going to be a pretty good option on a lot of other warriors too. Mainly, I envision Shu as a pretty good pick. With Shu, it's hard to find a best in slot artifact on her. People just kind of toss stuff on her for like experimentation reasons, at least in the artifact slot goes. And increasing Shu's health by 10% and her attack damage, as she already does a lot of damage on her normal attacks. Remember, Lethe is only going to do the big damage on her extra attack Omen ability, and the rest of them are going to be more debuffing, like just stacking the Omen stuff. But Shu, she does this damage all the time on everything, and just imagine getting an extra 20% on her push procs and everything. That's going to hurt pretty bad. On top of that, though, maybe Alencia. Even though I'm pretty sure that Lesinox Wrath is just a better artifact than this for Alencia, and that's because the 15% crit chance and the CR push every time she S1s into S2s, I believe is mathematically stronger. But, you know, it is an option if you don't have that artifact, and you can use this one instead. It is a limited artifact, so I do recommend if you have the powder to get at least one copy of it. And hopefully, when you pull for this unit, and remember that she is a limited unit, that you get even more copies of the artifact along the way. So what do I think about her? First of all, I want to say I am somewhat surprised that she is not a overly aggressive type unit. Obviously, she can be used in aggressive compositions, but I do think that she's going to be more in the standard to like aggressively pushing standard more than full out aggro. She maybe can be using Cleave just for the Frostbite. I don't really think so though, as she doesn't do enough immediate damage, and I don't think it's good enough just to fix Frostbite for her slot in Cleave. We already have that with something like Shepherd Jenna, and she's not very good. Part of that because Shepherd Jenna is too slow, but I think there's just better options than that. On top of that, a lot of anti-Cleave right now are either not Knights, and if they are, they're not Mitigation Knights. And a lot of also anti-Cleave, they're not even self-mitigation units. They're just kind of cheese like tech stuff that's like situationally built to fight Cleave. So doesn't even really do a lot against a lot of the anti-Cleave in the game right now. That being said, she is very good against the opposite of Cleave, which is Tank Down. Basically destroys them. Also very good against single carries like the Sage Vivian or the Void carries, especially pretty much counters their kiss almost completely with her Frostbite mechanic, and with the Omen as it does the true damage. Just also very good against the Mei Chloe comps, so comps that I'm pretty familiar with as I run them myself quite a bit. Very, very good against that. But at the same time, remember that yes, she is going to take that time to rev up to the Kraken ability, but because of her bulk overall, she's gonna have that survivability to maybe shrug off some of the damage that's gonna be incoming to her. Now, she just probably has some counters. Stealth units in particular seem pretty good against her. Also, anything that can potentially outspeed her, or maybe push her back, or maybe, I don't know, provoke her before she can get that omen on the 2 slot, something like that could hurt her a little bit. Obviously, injury is going to be something good against her. I predict that Alencia is going to see a pretty big stock rise after Lethe's release. Things like, say, Sharoon. She's also susceptible to debuffs, so Solitaria seems like a apt counter to her, especially if the Solitaria is a damage or an injury Solitaria. I think that that's going to be a nice tech against Lethe potentially also. But yeah, a pretty flexible unit. I can see it being used anywhere in like just below cleave, so very aggressive comps, up to down to like just above takedown. So a pretty wide array of playstyles. And for her builds overall, I foresee something similar to those no crit chance, no crit damage Abigail's. Seems like the most apt things probably. Maybe something like a Sage Ball. If the Sage Ball, instead of having the ER, instead maybe has some effectiveness instead. And that's how I see those stats popping up. Obviously, limited unit, so definitely pull on her. I'll be pulling for her later today on stream, of course, after the maintenance. So here are her stats. Light Knight. Good attack for a Knight. Her health is kind of low for one. Good defense though. Her base speed is atrocious at 99. She has some crit chance here, so no crit damage, and her imprint is attack, which is interesting for a Knight. So let's see what she does. Her skill 2, Ruler of the Seas, immune to debuffs with prevent movement, so sudden sleep. Increases critical hit resistance by 50%, 70 after her molas. So she just has a Senya passive, basically, or a more like a Gunther passive. Anyway, 70% crit resistance passively is pretty nuts. Also increases crit resistance of all allies except for the caster for 2 turns. This is just the buff, and the buff gives 50%, and this just happens at the start of the battle. After attacking, increases the attack of the caster by 10%. Remember that she does have pretty high attack. This effect can stack up to 5 times. So let's over here and just see that she has the crit hit resist buff on everybody already. And the battle just started. And because she's so slow, she's all the way back here just chilling out. Okay, so the next one here is Navy Captain Landy's Mobilize the Warship. Consumes 100 Fighting Spirit, which means that she's a Fighting Spirit unit, so she can't use this right away. Probably a good thing, because it is a 3-turn attack buff for her. Attacks all enemies with a 100% chance to stun for 1 turn. Also penetrates defense by 60%. So let's see it right here. In a second here, we'll see the boat. Here's the boat, boom, and it just hits everything here, and we see the damage there. Remember that these numbers here kind of lie. Don't give that much stock to them until we see actual math and calculations on it. So, but it seems pretty good. And her skill 1 is Precision Targeting. So acquires 25 Fighting Spirit, attacks the enemy with gunfire, and increases combat readiness of the caster by 20%, 25 with the molars. And remember, because she's so slow, this 25% chance is gonna feel even better. Has a 40% chance to activate Salvo Fire as an extra attack. And what this is an AoE, attacks all enemies. Well, that's what an AoE is. And recovers health of the caster. Amount recovered, a portion of the caster's max health. Soul burn with 10 souls to increase to 100%. As for her kit and what I think about it, I've actually had a lot of time to think about this as I saw her kit this morning when I woke up. Obviously, I had to leave the house and I just got back here recently to do this video. And it's hard to say. I'm not as confident on this one as I was on Lethe. as Lethe's kit seems very straightforward in what it's doing and what it can do and what units can be used against. As for Landy here, I know a lot of people feel she's overpowered or just a must pull. I'm not too sure. Now, obviously, I'm going to try to get it because she's amazing looking. I mean, look at her. One of the best designs I've seen in the game overall. Navy Captain Landy here. But people are theorizing she may be good against Cleave. I don't know. Because what does Cleave do? Since the beginning of time, Epic 7 time, ignore ER, strip buffs. From Bizarre to Ran, different units, different times, same thing. And they don't care about this critical hit resistance buff they give to your team. It is gone. I mean, what good is Landy if the only real team support she does is that buff and is meaningless against those cleave comps? Now, obviously, there are other cleave comps that maybe don't strip buffs off or stuff like that. And what do I call those cleave comps? Well, I call them bad. Or, I guess Ahmed Cleave doesn't really do that. So maybe she's good against Ahmed Cleave, right? But also, her S3 can take a while to rev up, because you have to rely on those S1s and into S2 potentially to get to the S3, which is going to be her main source of damage. And if you're unlucky, or just have somebody who can play around her and maybe not attack her to proc those counterattacks, as I do think that counterattack set is pretty much a must on her because of her low speed. And Elbrus is also pretty much a must on her because she's a knight and she has to get those S1s, S2s off. It's a big deal that they can be procced outside of her turn also. If that wasn't the case, I feel like she'd be a dead unit already. But just because she has that potential to proc that S1 to S2, no matter what, like Shu does, that automatically puts her into contention to be a good unit. And I feel like she's gonna be very similar to, say, a Senya overall, with probably similar builds, honestly. Maybe a little bit more on the bulk side overall. Maybe even dropping ER because she's already immune to stun and sleep. So ER is a little bit less useful for her. And she also really doesn't need buffs as much. Yes, the attack buff is nice, but that gets stripped off. That's not the worst thing in the world for her, especially because she only gives it to herself after she S3s, which might take a couple of turns for her to even get the fighting spirit to S3 in the first place. It's just hard for me to envision what type of teams she's going to be used against. Probably against not Cleave, but more aggressive teams that don't have reliable ways to strip buffs on your team. So remember, a lot of things though, strip buffs, AOL, Phases Litica, even Concrete Lilius will reduce by a turn. So it's not like her buff that she gives her team is going to stay there forever, and it might be there for less time than you would want. Obviously, Senya, which is what I'm comparing her to, is a strong unit and can potentially solo these more squishy teams that she sometimes goes against. Landy might be the same way, that we go against a team that is a little bit squishier and just can't do enough damage to deal with her, as I do think she's going to be pretty bulky overall. And she also has the self-sustain with the passive too. So just have her. They're not critting her. They can't stun her or anything like that. And she's proccing those counterattacks, those S2s, doing that damage, killing that health and everything like that. She could be a pretty, honestly, a pretty good anti-aggro team unit. Also, might not be that bad, too, against tankier teams that just can't do that much damage because of the way that her attack revs up. It's just not as much of a, I know I want to use this unit right here against these type of, this kind of composition. More of a, hey, you know what? This unit is going to be above average in this situation, and I want to pick it right here. That's what I feel this is going to be like. So, nothing completely incredible. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes she's gonna feel incredible like Shu does, right? Because Shu just goes like, shoo, 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 like, you know, and just like, you know, rips everything off like that, right? Or Senya just like never gets crit and always counterattacks, and you know, and the enemy just dies and it feels amazing. But other times, Senya gets crit like 3 times in a row, she dies. And sometimes Shu is just like sleep because she's a fucking rat, okay? I think very similar feelings are gonna happen with Landy. So I said I don't think she's gonna be, you know, overpowered, but I did compare her to 2 of the strongest RGB units we have in the game right now for PvP, so keep that in mind. Anyway, don't forget, this is a maintenance day, so I'll see you after the maintenance on Twitch. Thanks for watching. Been a good one. Nep out.